Okay, Christian, welcome to Mastering You. Welcome to the podcast. How are we today?
Good, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for coming along. It's yes, absolute pleasure to have you along. We've had sort of an on and off like meetings over the years, and I think we've been very much in alignment, and we've obviously got similar interests in relation to what we do. But one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on the podcast is just always like to, and anyone that's really been listening to our episodes to date knows that ultimately the goal of like mastering you or mastering yourself, there's so many different avenues to it. So it's always good to get a different kind of like slant on it. And obviously a big factor to many of the podcasts that we do revolve around your thinking and your mindset and behavior change in general. As a hypnotherapist, firstly, I'd love to know, like, how did you get into this field?
After all these years, I should really come up with a good story. There's combinations of reasons. There isn't a great story, to be fair. I'm fascinated with human potential, human behaviour. Growing up, I did a lot of sport, I did martial arts. I was always fascinated with kind of the mind-body connection, but only from a curious perspective. Never had great ambitions to be a hypnotherapist or a mindset coach. It was just at a time doing a bit of self-exploring, came across a course that, was just for pure personal interest at that point. And then I was just fascinated with the subject, and it just blew me away. And it kind of took my kind of interest of the power of the mind to another level. So again, just explored it, just did too many courses later, and just decided that actually this is a great way to help people to change, to achieve their personal best. So I decided to make a career out of it, and I've been doing it longer than anything else now.
Wow. What sports were you really like into when you were kind of getting into mindset?
Yeah, I mean, it probably was the martial arts.
Right. Yeah.
As a kid, I played whatever sports I could. Fitness has always been quite important to me, but martial arts probably. I got injury, nothing serious. I got shin splints when I was 14, 15, and that's when I made the shift from playing football and did kickboxing for a number of years. But the style I did was had evolved from a style of kung fu, so it was more, there was a heavy martial arts theme to it rather than just the sport of kickboxing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, and then just growing up, just watching people, fascinated with, what made some people do certain things, and particularly growing up with people, when people kind of had that entrepreneurial flair, just what made people tick just fascinated me. And I say, probably 19 years later, it still fascinates me now.
It's amazing, isn't it, with martial arts, how much of a connection that has in regards to mindset with people. We had Steve Coleman on the podcast.
Yeah, I know Steve.
Yeah. And I've known Steve for years, and but I didn't know that he kind of started his personal development journey at the age of like 8 or 9 after reading his first sort of kung fu book, because a lot of what they teach intertwines with many philosophies and sort of ancient philosophies, and lots of those, have mindset related benefits, and it made a lot of sense actually.
Yeah. It's the same with yoga. I remember doing a kind of a taster introductory to yoga many years ago, and I still use some of the breathing techniques that come from that, and I share them with many of my clients even to today, because breathing for me is one of the fastest, quickest, most effective ways of changing the way you're thinking and feeling. And people often talk about the power of now and being more present, and that's certainly a very effective, quick way of helping to achieve that, which you could utilize for many different reasons.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we talked about before this was the mind-body connection and how intertwined they are, because I'm curious to how you think about it, but a lot of people talk about mindset, or they talk about mental health almost like they're separate entities or separate things to the physical body and the physical state. And I feel like it's a big problem, because it really almost encourages a lack of understanding about what really it is to have full mental health and full mental awareness. Is that something you'd agree on?
Yeah, I draw from physical fitness an awful lot when I'm working with clients, and I have to make the kind of comparison that you can benefit a lot from approaching your mental health in the same way as you do your physical fitness. And I often refer to it as your mind fitness. You don't read a book once, you don't meditate once, you don't try anything once and then think, I've mastered it, no more than you walk into a gym or have a session with PT and then think, right, that's my fitness sorted for life, I don't need to go there again.
Yeah.
So to really kind of work on your mind fitness the same way as you do your physical fitness and put the two working alongside each other, it's such a great combination. And at the end of the day, what goes on in your mind affects the body, and what goes on in the body affects your mind. So to only focus on one part of it, you're doing yourself a misservice. So I think it's equally vitally important to pay attention to the both, because you can't separate them really.
Yeah, I kind of think that, I don't know if you agree, but I kind of think that a big issue, and the reason why it exists, is because with the physical body, it's easy to measure, isn't it? So if someone wants to do one of our 6-week programs, for instance, we can see the difference in weight that they've lost, the body fat percentage, we can measure their hip and their waist, and we have tangible things that we can see the different, like literally see. We do progress pictures as well with our clients. So it's a very clear distinction from this is where you were and this is where you are now. When you're working on your health to improve your mindset, or you're doing like breath work or even different practices, cognitive practices, it's a lot more complicated, and you can't just put your brain into maybe one day we'll be able to have the technology just to kind of measure the changes. Obviously we have like new neuroplasticity x-rays or whatever, but you can't see those tangible differences so much, can you?
No, and I think that's why there's a massive shift, and I think awareness towards mental health is changing dramatically for the better. But yeah. I think that's still why there's a stigma attached to it, because if I see a client, for example, who's struggling with stress and anxiety, to the outside it's invisible. No one, like you say, you can't see it. Whereas if someone, I don't know, breaks a leg or has got physical injury, it's visible. So people have much more compassion and empathy for that person. So you're absolutely right. It's the difference between what's visible and what's invisible. And unfortunately, unlike physical transformations, it's not always as easy to kind of have those indicators to measure your progress. But there are ways, much more subtle, for the individual to track progress. It's hard without context, but even things like if people journal, for example, it's amazing when you look back, whether that be at your goals, whether that be, if someone tries a new technique, for example, like a breathing exercise, it may be that they find it slightly challenging or stretching, but when they look back over a period of a few weeks, they realize now actually that's so much more easy for them to do.
Yeah,
I completely understand that it's not as visible and easy as measuring someone's body dimensions and fat percentages, but it is still possible. But the thing is, when we change, because we are changing all the time, it's often very subtle that we don't acknowledge and recognize that we're changing. So when you're purposefully setting out to make a change, it is quite important to recognize some of those milestones. Otherwise, you don't give yourself credit for how far you've come.
Yeah, and we're really bad at that, aren't we? Like when we do achieve anything, it's can you talk to the idea? I can't remember what the scientific law is now, but the idea that basically the human brain is kind of accustomed to always focusing on the negative, and you could have everything go right for you all day long, like all the green lights hit, and maybe you get a new job or you get a new promotion, but maybe at the end of the day something happens, or you have an argument with your spouse or something, and then it kind of all of those good things that happen, it kind of minuses all of them.
Yeah, and like you said, I don't get too involved in kind of trying to explain the science behind it. It's my style is much more to let's break it down to simple terms. Let's make it usable. Let's understand it in a way that is easy for people to kind of get on board with. But you're absolutely right that the core principle of the mind is to protect us, to maintain us, and to keep us as we are. And we're wired at primitive level to look out, to protect ourselves. So we're constantly looking for dangers and threats. And unfortunately, in modern living, that kind of causes us to look at the negatives more than we pay attention and focus on the positives.
Yeah.
And, and I was talking to a client this morning, and we're referring to the fact that the way the mind works is, how I explain it to people is there's two parts. We've got the conscious part, which is the thinking part, which is the analytical, the rational part, the part where you can reach a point where you decide that you want to make a change. That's great, that's fantastic, but in my view, it's like looking at an iceberg. The tip we see above sea level is vast, it's huge, it's phenomenal, but compared to what's underneath, it's just the tip. So you've also got to acknowledge what I refer to as the subconscious, the bit underneath, which is the automatic, the kind of part that looks after all of our natural functions, but as well as everything we've heard, we've learned, we've experienced, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, attitudes, behaviors, all of those things that once the mind accepts, it has a function to look after it and to protect it. And for our sanity, that's brilliant. Because if you think of everything we learn from birth until this point, we then don't have to relearn it. So you don't wake up in the morning and have to remember consciously, how do you walk? How do you talk? How do you tie shoelaces? How do you drive? When we learn something and repeat the process often enough, whether that be a physical process or a mental thought process, it reaches a tipping point where it then becomes an automatic function.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, for all the good things, that's brilliant. But when we then reach a time or a point where we're doing something that we don't want to be doing anymore, that's where that frustration kicks in, because intellectually, we know that. You can tell your clients, give them all the knowledge, the advice, the wisdom. But the reason they struggle often is because there's this kind of internal battle that goes on. And ultimately, it doesn't matter how much we try to change on our own consciously, we often struggle because we're neglecting to pay attention to the 90% of our mind power, which is the automatic bit that happens without us having to think or to try. So to make any permanent, real, long-lasting change subconsciously, we really need to pay attention to that bit and get the two working together rather than fighting it out.
What are the key strategies for doing that then, Christian?
There's quite a few. And again, consciously, you can make effort yourself. And like I say, educating yourself, having the awareness, learning, feeding and nurturing your mind in the same way as you feed and nurture your body with good fuel. Expose yourself to, anything that's going to help with growth, with development, whether that be listening to podcasts like yours, whether that be watching YouTube videos, reading good sources of material that help. Repetition's key. Okay.
Yeah.
So regardless of which way you look at it, if you do something and expose yourself to that kind of nurturing, then that over time isn't a quick fix, but over time it certainly will help you. But for me, this is where I use hypnosis, because for me the power of hypnosis isn't the hypnosis that helps clients to make a change, because I could hypnotize a client and they could feel relaxed. Most people do find it relaxing, which is why it's brilliant for stress management, anxiety, pain control, those kind of things, because the level of awareness on its own is a relaxing state, very similar to meditation, very similar to mindfulness. For me, the biggest difference is why we then, or how we then utilize that state of mind to make a change. So for me, the hypnosis is a vehicle to bypass that conscious bit to open up the subconscious.
Right.
I don't say or do anything I can't do with a client consciously, but by doing it in that level of awareness, it's really helping to make the change at that deeper level, so that the two parts then become more aligned with one another as the person continues on their day-to-day life.
Okay, so I'd like to dig a bit deeper into that, because that, like I said to you just before we started, that hypnosis is I'm curious, because it's an area I've never really specifically studied. And you said, well, you probably know quite a few bits already, but there's different labels for things. So I'm sure many people listening to this podcast would love to know, like, can you explain it further, because personally, I'm aware of there's probably many misconceptions around hypnosis.
Sure.
And yeah, so what is hypnosis? What is it that's happening? It's not a sleep state, is it?
No. It's a different level of awareness. And if you compare it, I mean, most of us go in and out of an altered state of awareness many times throughout our day, whether that be when we're so engrossed in doing something, whether it be when you're driving and you go into that level of awareness but you can't remember how you got there, or if you've been past a certain junction. Those natural kind of states of mind, similar to when you're kind of, it's different for different people. Some people can kind of get into almost a hypnotic state when they're looking at a kind of an open roaring fire or a stunning landscape. Anything that takes you into a slightly different level of awareness, that level of awareness is very similar to what hypnosis is. So when I work with clients for the first time, they're often not sure whether they have or they haven't been hypnotized, because it already feels so similar and familiar to them, because they already go in and out of that state on their own. But like I say, rather than me getting in the car with a client driving around waiting for them to glaze over, my role is to guide them into a similar level of awareness. And there's many different ways that you can achieve that. Traditionally, I follow a process of what I call mental, physical, and emotional relaxation. So it is a very comfortable, very pleasant kind of sensation and feeling. But like I said, if I was just to hypnotize somebody and do nothing else, all it will ever be is a relaxing experience. So it's what happens while you're in that level of awareness that makes the kind of biggest impact and transformation, really. But going back to what you said about misconception, I'd say that probably the biggest misconception people have is about control. It's often portrayed, whether that be
click your fingers and get them to do what they want.
And unfortunately, it isn't like that. I say unfortunately because it'd be brilliant to be able to help people make changes at the click of a finger. It can be very miraculous, but it's often just being portrayed that way through media, through films, cartoons even. It makes it look as if the hypnotist is the one in control. Truthfully, all I am is a glorified guide. I guide people through a process to help them make the changes they want to make. And that's the key thing that they want to make. I cannot make anybody do anything they don't want to do. So if for whatever reason somebody decided that they didn't want to continue with the process, they can open their eyes, they can talk back to me, they can get up and leave anytime they want to. The individual has the ability to respond to the process. Equally, they have the ability to resist it. So if somebody's not quite ready, or they're doing it for the wrong reasons, or to please somebody else, it's not going to be as effective as if they've made that point, they've got to that point of readiness and desire to want to make the change for themselves.
Yeah, because I'm guessing once upon a time when I remember when I was a kid and Paul McKenna was really popular, it almost was like the new Saturday Night Magic show, wasn't it? You had like the Wayne Dobsons and the, or the different magicians. Like it was almost like the new, I guess to some extent, did that sort of tarnish what hypnotherapy is a little bit? Or
I mean, there's two sides of the argument. You could say yes, but I'd like to think of it on the other side of it. That mass exposure has brought the awareness to people that it's possible.
Yeah, there's always two sides, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, whether it be Paul McKenna, whether it be some of the kind of sketches Darren Brown's done over the years, it's what you don't see, because it's not very exciting, is the prep work that has to go in to get people to that receptive, responsive state. So you only see the highlights on TV. You see the people who are the most receptive, responsive. I mean, you don't tend to see them anymore in this country. But I remember many years ago, I did go and watch a Paul McKenna live stage show. And, what you don't realise is that, unless you've been to one, is they get the whole audience involved. So they'll say, stand up, do this, do that. If you're still doing this, sit down. If you're doing this, stay standing. And they take people through a process until they get the most highly receptive, responsive people on that given day, in that given moment.
Okay. So it's a numbers game.
Well, it's highlighting that people are doing it on an almost voluntary basis. And even with the TV stuff, if you kind of cast your mind back, you'd often see they may have, 6 to 10 people on stage, but some people wouldn't respond and be doing the things they were asked to do.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, is everyone has the natural ability to go with it. But equally, if for whatever reason they didn't want to, or it was against their belief, their morals, or they just didn't have the desire, then they have the ability to not follow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess on the plus side, it does show what is capable of the mind, you know,
Yeah.
because that in itself kind of shows that there's more to what am I, you know, what, because you hear that one of the stats you hear a lot is like we only use, was it 70 or 10% or 20% of our brain. I don't know where that stat came from, but
it's a popular one.
It's a
it's
popular
just one of those
one
things that get bandied around, doesn't it? But I can buy into it. I believe it.
So when it comes to hypnosis, what about self-hypnosis? What about can you use some of these strategies on yourself?
Absolutely, without a doubt. And some people would even say all forms of hypnosis is self-hypnosis, because the individual has got to want it. They're just having somebody facilitate the process for them. But yeah, you can learn, self-hypnosis, auto-suggestion, and even things like, visualization and guided imagery, all those things that you can do more consciously. If you do that in a different level of awareness, just amps up the power and the effectiveness of these things. So, whether you call it, I remember the first time I was hypnotized, I said to the chap, that's just the same as what we do at the end of yoga. That guided relaxation is just the same feeling process. But again, in yoga, we were doing it to achieve that kind of peaceful, quiet headspace. But with hypnotherapy, the idea is then to help somebody to make a change while they're in that level of awareness. But yeah, you can learn self-hypnosis techniques and strategies that helps you to change your mindset. Absolutely.
Nice. What are some quick wins that people could start to practice?
From just a generic kind of change in the mindset perspective, do you mean?
Yeah, and just to take advantage of that state of mind. You mentioned breath earlier. Is that one of your go-tos? Is it?
I definitely. I mean, I work with people who unfortunately, I think it's something that's heightened in our modern world. And stress and anxiety. I think the fast pace of modern living. And when I'm working with clients who suffer with panic attacks, with anxiety, I say, if I can just teach you a few simple breathing exercises and we did nothing else, and you actually use them, it will make a massive difference and it will help you tremendously. So yeah, when I'm kind of helping someone get into a kind of a state of mind that I refer to as hypnosis, we often use breath work as part of that. So consciously, definitely using some breathing exercises in day-to-day life, because when it comes to mindset, people often talk about positive thinking, and as valuable as it is, I think often we overlook the middle ground, which is neutral thinking. And people often talk about mindfulness and being present and being in the here and the now. And as much as people are usually at a place where they're unhappy with something and they want to achieve the opposite, sometimes just giving ourselves that time to get out of our own head naturally and just be in the here and now. I often say it's like getting off the treadmill, the hamster wheel of day-to-day life, and just be for a few moments. And breathing is a really brilliant and easy way of doing that. There's so many different versions. For me, the easiest one is just to take some deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Another version, which I do explain on one of my YouTube videos, is something which I call focus breathing. And that's just get people to imagine their breath like a circle. So it's equal in and equal out, because a lot of them are short in, long out. So just to slow your breathing down and just focus on the breath going in and out, and maybe count to your own count of 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 1 to 6, depending on how fast you count, and just focus on that, just in and out. And that again just helps to give the mind something to focus on, which is of huge benefit. But when we breathe more effectively, more efficiently, the body is naturally going into its kind of relaxation response, and it's impossible to be stressed and anxious and relaxed at the same time.
Yeah, and to add to like the self-hypnosis part, once you're in that state of mind and you're starting to kind of be more calm and less anxious, do you add any sort of self-talk to that?
Yeah, I mean,
Or...
if we go back a step, I think even before that, if someone is feeling stuck, if someone wants to make a change, if someone's not happy with something, or they just know there's something else they want to achieve, I take people for what I call the 3 W's, which is to, first of all, to establish where you are. You know, if you take a snapshot of your current existence, and it's a kind of, I guess, a similar thing that you do when you kind of do an induction with people. They're coming to you for a reason. They're not happy with something. So you have to get clear on that. That's the bit people are really good at. As you said earlier, people tend to focus on the negative.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
As much as we want to move away from that, it's an important first step. So get really clear on what your pain is, what you're unhappy with, what you don't want, but then you need to focus on what you do want. Think of the mind like the sat nav in a car. It's only as good as the focus and the programming you give it. So if you were to get in the car and focus the sat nav for where you didn't want to go, that doesn't help you get there.
Yeah.
If you went shopping and took a shopping list of things you didn't want to buy, that's not very productive.
Yeah.
But it's a good starting point. Now you need to get clear on where you do want to go. And once you know where you want to go, your mind will help you to get there. The third W is why. Why do you want that? You know, because you may or may not agree with me, but I'm guessing if someone wants to make a physical transformation, yes, they want to look different, but there's usually an underlying kind of reason why. There's a higher motivation, whether that's to feel more confident, to feel happier, to feel whatever the personal motivation is. And it really doesn't matter. Everyone is different. But once you connect to why you want something, that's like putting the fuel, that's like charging it up to make it happen. Otherwise, if you only focus on what you don't want and have a vague idea of what you do want, that'd be like sitting in the car with no fuel in the tank. You know where you want to go, but it's frustrating. You can't get there.
Yeah.
So to get clear on what you don't want, to get clear on what you do want, and to focus on why you want it is a really good starting point. Then, obviously, if you do something like the breathing, some kind of self-hypnosis, some sort of mindfulness, just directing your thoughts towards what you want on a daily basis. If you spend more time thinking about what you want rather than what you don't want, that will help tremendously.
Yeah.
We tend to live on autopilot. We tend to not deliberately choose our thoughts, but our thoughts lead to feelings, and then our feelings lead to our actions. So if we don't like the action or the direction that we're going in, we need to change something in that sequence. So when you change your thinking, your thought processes, that change how you feel, and then that changes the actions you take.
Yeah.
So to consciously, deliberately write down, if you like, what is your goal, what is your outcome, what is the desired outcomes that you would like for your life, and then just reflect upon that on a kind of daily basis, you're going to be training your mind to pay more attention to that, and then your mind will know what to do and where to go to make that happen. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. I think when you lay it out like that, and in such a great way as well, like really simple step by step. I mean, we had Andrew Kapp on, who's he's an author, and he wrote a book on called The Last Law of Attraction. So he's a law of attraction expert.
Yeah.
And I had a few conversations with people after that, because and before as well, just asking people what their view on the law of attraction is. And again, you get all these different ideas, and people can think it's really woo woo, and obviously The Secret pops up, but ultimately, like you said, when you lay it out, even if you take it to the point of just you're thinking about the things that you want rather than things that you do want, it's not really rocket science when you think, well, there's more chance of attracting good stuff in your life if that's where your attention is, compared to if you're thinking about all of the things that are wrong all the time. You don't have to call it a law. It's just basic common sense, right?
It's choice, isn't it? It's choice. Do you want to spend your time thinking about the negative and the things you don't want, or do you want to choose to think about the things you do? It takes no more time and effort.
Yeah, I suppose the obstacle is, and I don't know, I'm still working out this, but like the world we live in, like particularly now, pandemic, you've only got to turn on the news or the radio. It's just bad news all the time, and you don't always realize subconsciously how much of that incoming noise is having on your subconscious. So when it comes to the law of attraction, or even just, you know, achieving your life goals, if your brain and your thoughts are being, you know, if you could see information and you could see the difference between good information and bad information, like listen to hopefully a educational podcast like this compared to, you know, how many people have died today from COVID, you know, which bits of information are going to take you further towards where you want to go compared to where you don't want to go. It would be really obvious. It'd be like, oh, well, I don't want that because, you know, I've got enough of that stuff coming in. But it's not always, again, you know, when we're talking about the mindset, unlike the food that we eat, that is very tangible and physical, and we know how many calories we're eating, you can't always quantify how much, you know, if you're in a bad relationship, or if you've got friends that are having an effect on you, we don't even realize, like, you know, they're having such a negative, effect on you. Do you find that with people like that you meet that maybe suffering with any depression, anxiety, stress, that actually they're not even aware, they haven't got that self-awareness to realize what's causing the stress?
Yeah, and again, it goes back to the fact that more often than not, unless somebody's reached a point where they're taking control of their mind, their life, that most of us more often than not are living on autopilot. And like you say, we don't realize that we're exposed on a daily basis to things that perhaps aren't supporting, nurturing, or healthy in lots of ways. So as much as you can't always avoid it, you know, you can't avoid maybe certain toxic relationships, could be friends, could be family, could be colleagues, that as much as you love them, you know, their viewpoint on life might be different to yours. But we are affected by these things. Like you say, also, we're bombarded with media. You know, gone are the days where you switch on the TV or the radio and listen to the news once a day. You know, social media, people walk around with their phone attached to the end of their hand, and they're watching, listening, and seeing things on an ongoing basis. And it goes back to repetition. If we're exposed to things repeatedly, it does have an impact. And as I said a moment ago, thoughts impact our feelings. And then those feelings impact the actions or the inaction that we feel like taking. So to counter that, because we're not responsible for all the external stuff, and we can't change all of that all at once individually, but the one thing you can control is how you choose to spend your time, and perhaps start to weave into your day things that you know are deliberately going to kind of be more purposeful, be more intentional with some of the things you read, you watch, you listen to, and the conversations you have. And then that's where, you know, working on your own personal development, your own personal growth, if you view it like physical fitness, you can't go wrong.
No, 100% agree with that. So you know, when in your own work, Christian, so, you know, do you work with a very different array of people, and what are some big wins or stories that you've had where, you know, people have actually done this, what we're talking about here, which is actually get the self-awareness to understand what's going on, and then to actually start to do the self-development and start to come out smelling with some roses?
I think, you know, there's many different examples of how you could utilize this. But again, if I can repeat myself, that it isn't kind of a one-hit wonder. You know, you can have success in one area, but to really put yourself in a place of strength, a place of confidence, a place of being equipped and resilient to deal with all that life throws our way. You know probably better than many people listening how life can throw curveballs your way, and you have to adapt, you have to evolve, you have to be ready to kind of roll with the punches that life throws your way. And if you work on your kind of mental strength, your mind fitness in a kind of prehab way, in a preventative way, then that puts you in a really great place, rather than too often people do it in a reactive way. And it's still going to be helpful, but if you kind of work on the mindset in advance of those problems, you're going to be a much more equipped to deal with those things as they arise.
I'm curious with you touch on social media, and you've been doing this a long time. I've been coaching people quite a long time now, 15 years. I mean, have you have you noticed an increase in things like anxiety, stress? Do you feel like there is links with a big link with social media? Is that something we really need to be more self-aware of?
I mean, this is personal opinion. I've got no fact
Of
other
course,
than
yeah.
kind of anecdotal evidence from working with clients. Without a shadow of a doubt, when I first started working with clients over 18 years ago, social media didn't exist. And I think it has done. I think social media is brilliant and fantastic. I'm not anti it. Lots of my business is generated and lots of the ways I help people that I never get to meet is done through social media. So I think it's a fantastic and amazing tool that we have, but it's how we use it.
I agree.
I think it's definitely linked in with changing people's mental health. The big one is the whole kind of curse of comparison. People flick through their feed and see people living these wonderful lifestyles, looking a certain way, but it's a snapshot. It's someone's highlights, it's someone's show reel. People don't get to see the behind the scenes bit, or people don't actually know what's going on inside people's head. And go back to your question, I've been very fortunate and lucky to work with people from all walks of life, I always say, from house husbands to household names, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, how much success you have, people are only human. And, I've worked with people that are in the public eye and they have the same kind of insecurities and doubts as somebody who's watching them and looking at their social media profile. So I think, yes, it has had an impact. But again, it goes back to how much time you spend on these things. Unfortunately, the mind, the reason why people are so hooked on it is because every time they look, they're waiting to get that dopamine fix from seeing something great. And then we train ourselves that if we look again, there might be something exciting for us to look at again, or we might have that positive comment, or someone might have interacted with us. So your mind is almost being trained to look out for that fix that you get from looking. But you're chasing something that is never going to completely fulfill you. So my guidance would be to be intentional with, use it, but don't be controlled by it. Take time where you disconnect from it and spend time living your life in other ways. As they say.
Yeah, it's funny when you were saying that. I gave me a lot of similars with like nutrition coaching that I do, because there are many aspects of nutrition, like whether it's drinking, caffeine is one at the moment. People seem to be living on caffeine, whether they're just trying to get that hit of energy boost, or whether it's alcohol. I think alcohol sales have gone up like 60-70% from the lockdown.
Wow.
And so it's one of those. I say to people, well, it's only a problem if it's a problem. And it's a bit like social media. Like, social media is great, but there comes a point where it can be a problem. And you have to ask yourself with nutrition that, am I having a drink because I'm just really enjoying just chilling out, having a nice quiet evening, having a nice meal, maybe a glass of wine, great. Am I having a coffee in the morning just to kind of give me a bit of a perk up? Or is that actually becoming a crutch where I need it rather than I'm enjoying the process? And it's just again, it always seems to tie back into the self-awareness of why am I acting with this behavior? Why is this behavior present? And then if you can answer that regularly, then you'll gain more self-awareness and you'll be like, okay, maybe I'm a bit addicted to coffee. Maybe I'm a bit addicted to my phone.
Yeah.
Maybe it might be worth like giving myself a detox on my phone between the hours of 12 and 4, or whatever rules you can give yourself. Do you often sometimes do that with clients? Do you set some boundaries, set some rules to kind of work by?
Yeah, I mean, the way I like to work is let clients come up with their own, rather than telling them. The moment you tell them to do something, then that inner kind of resistance comes into play. But certainly getting people to have a look and think. And like you say, with food, with drink, with drugs, with sex, with shopping, all of those things people will do. Maybe they do it and then enjoy it, so they then repeat it and it becomes a habit. Or sometimes they're doing those things to change the way they're feeling. So sometimes people are feeling empty, they're bored, they're lonely, they're frustrated, they're stressed. So they find themselves turning to a drink at the end of the day to reward themselves, to relax themselves. Great, nothing wrong with that. But then, as you say, then the days, the weeks, the months go by, and they realize they're in a habit of doing it just for the sake of it, not for enjoyment. So it's being aware of that, and then you can break that cycle. But yeah, all those
that's interesting as well, because also the problem with having that crutch to go to is you lose, like, sometimes feeling a bit crappy or struggling a little bit is a good thing, right? You know, that's what allows us to grow. So
definitely,
rather than go to alcohol or go to whatever your crutch is, back to your phone, you know, actually sitting on it, whatever the problem is, working it out, and like you said earlier, like doing maybe some journaling or doing some breath work just to kind of like get your mind clear, or going for a nice walk, going to the gym. Yeah, just doing something that kind of is not, yeah. And it makes me wonder, like, is that one of the reasons why we're maybe not as emotionally resilient sometimes as we could be, because we're sort of taking the easy route of getting the next dopamine hit from the
well, it's instant gratification, isn't it? It's instant gratification, and you know, we tend to favour that one over delayed gratification. And like you said, with, you know, lockdown and alcohol consumption going up, that's not because everyone's going through a particularly hard time. It's just, for some people, it's boredom, you know, because their circumstances have changed and it's more readily available. They're at home. And again, nothing wrong with any of these habits or behaviours until you don't want to be doing it anymore. The trouble is, by then it's become an ingrained habit, and then you just decided and choosing to stop it or to not do it anymore. Or that's why some people struggle with their phone. You can always see it. They put it down and it's almost like they're reaching out to get it because they've trained their mind to do that. So awareness is great, but then you need to do something about it. And of course, that's the work I do with clients one-on-one. But if someone's looking to make a change themselves, the best thing I can do is explore some more positive, empowering habits. So rather than fighting the habit or the behavior or the attitude they don't want, kind of instill new ones that are more empowering.
Yeah. No, it's great. And I really like having these conversations, because I just feel like more people would benefit from knowing that these are possibilities. I think that's one of the biggest feelings I constantly get, is that people aren't aware that what type of change you can actually make. And it doesn't, like you said, the fact that you can make changes as simple as just breathe. Like, breathe correct. Like, it's quite funny what sometimes I think about it. I think about all of the courses and all of the neuroscience and all of the books that I've read and all of the, like, 15, 20 years of like studying. And then I'll spend, when I've actually done about you, I've come full circle a lot with my own coaching. Like, we literally, you know, we work off 5 habits now. You know, we teach people, you know, about food quality, food quantity. We teach them about hydration and stress management and moving more. And, you know, it's just focusing on the absolute basics, foundations: sleep better, breathe, drink some water, eat some good food. Like, yeah, obviously we go into more detail with, you know, some macros and stuff, but I call that like the 5%. Like, it's the smaller stuff, like that can help you. But ultimately, until you are, you know, managing your stress levels, until you are getting a good amount of hydration in your body, then the 5% are kind of pointless. They just don't work. I'm sure you have your own philosophies on that, in terms of which 5% are just pointless until you've got the big foundations, you know, nailed.
Yeah, and that's why I really like your approach and the way you do it, because you're approaching it from a lifestyle rather than just focusing on the food or the activity. And, you know, when I'm working with clients, and again I revert back to the kind of mind fitness, I say to them, you need to weave into your day-to-day life some lifestyle strategies that help keep you moving forward in the direction you want. You know, everything we do, think, and put into our mouth, there's one of two things: either moves us closer towards what we want or further away from it. So you've got to choose deliberately some of the things that you can do on a day-to-day basis, but break it down. You know, I was saying to my clients, just ask yourself, you know, what's the one thing you can do today? What's the one thing you can do this week that will move you forward in the direction that you want? don't overcomplicate it. And I think the other view that sometimes prevents or gets in the way of people making positive change from a mindset point of view is, we said about how simple and effective breathing is. People sometimes overlook it because it is so simple. They think it has to be hard, it has to be complicated, it's going to be difficult, so they turn off.
Yeah.
And the mind, again, its default is to take the path of least resistance and keep doing what it always does until it has enough of a reason and incentive to change. So, whether it be listening to this or one of your many other episodes, the best thing people do is, okay, how best can I apply this to my situation? It might not be exactly one of the things that we've mentioned, but if they can take one thing away from what we've just been talking about and apply it in their life some way, then that's, a positive step forward in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe the issue is, like, we've been so sort of conditioned to think that we have to pay for solutions. where if you think about most things like sleep, you don't even have to pay for that.
No.
Breathing, you don't need to pay for that. Moving, you don't need to pay for that.
but
drinking water, you don't need to pay for that, really.
No, agreed. But sometimes, the amount of times clients will sit in front of me and say, well, it's easy when you explain it like that. I think people get so kind of muddled in their own thoughts and the misinformation or the conflicting information that sometimes we just need to take a step back and just go back to basics, as you say, and just implement those simple things and then see where that takes you. You can complicate it as much as you like further down the road, but start simple.
And just to finish up, like I always say to people, if anyone's listened to this, like if you don't believe me, don't think that you've got to do it and that's like your new thing. Do it as an experiment. Try it for 7 days. Yeah. Try breathing each day. Like actually, obviously you have to breathe each day, but breathing practice. Choose a breathing practice. Pick a simple workout plan. Maybe 3 exercises, 10 reps. Repeat it 3 times, and then do your 10,000 steps. Go to bed a bit earlier. Avoid the blue light before bed so you get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Just journal each day how you're feeling, and as an experiment on your self-development, and you'd probably be surprised at how good you might feel. You're like, wow, that was a really cheap way of being better,
And I think it takes us back to the start of the conversation when you said about it's not as easy to measure your progress, it's not as visible, it's not as tangible. But I do exactly the same thing with my clients. I recommend people set themselves a 30-day focus every month and just choose one thing that they're going to focus on and print out a tracking sheet that I give them and just tick it, just highlight it. And then the progression, the momentum you get from seeing progress spurs you on to do more. And it doesn't matter what that thing is. Like you say, it could be drinking 2 litres a day. It could be getting your steps in. It could be meditating or whatever it is. Watch one positive YouTube video, whatever works for you. But just train yourself to kind of take action deliberately in a direction that you choose rather than just living on autopilot.
The problem is, Christian, a lot of people struggle with failure, don't they? So they and I talk a lot about, the skill, the ability to take an objective approach to your progress, because I think it is a skill. Like it's something that you build resilience to. And if you have a bad day, or if you've been rubbish on your food, or if you've been a rubbish parent one day because you've been shouting at your kids because you're angry, because you've lost your job or whatever it is, being able to just step back and almost like step out of yourself and like review it for what it was. And then, it takes a bit of courage, and it takes some sort of resilience, because you don't want to own up to that person that you've been, that monkey brain being kicking off. But if you can sort of step out of yourself and look at it from, because it's great when the days are good, and we're all it's easy to journal on days when you've been great, and I had this win and I sold this and whatever. But on the days when you've been rubbish, to actually be honest with yourself and get that down and review that, that's the hard part, isn't it?
But that's where the growth and the learning comes.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So, if it was all easy, if it was all positive,
there
would be no evolution. We wouldn't be growing. We'd be stuck as we are. But that's
But do you think that's the stumbling block? Why people don't review? Why they don't reflect? Why they don't journal? Is that the stumbling block? They don't want to admit what they don't want to know.
very possibly, or they're not ready to. But the journaling bit for me, on those days when it's not great, that's where the journaling can be the most effective, because one, you can look back at the evidence that you've created that reminds you how much progress you've made, how well you're doing, and the good stuff.
Yeah.
But when I get my clients to journal, I have the gel questions, which is, what am I grateful for today? What have I enjoyed today? And what have I learned? So let's just face it, and the learning works on two levels. One, it could reaffirm how much progress you've made or how well you're doing in a certain area. But if there is something that you can acknowledge that you could do better or you would like to do better, then that's a great way to acknowledge it, because when you acknowledge it, then you can do something about it. But if you just keep going and pretending or ignoring or burying your head in the sand, nothing's going to change. So grateful, enjoyed, and learned, those kind of free self-reflection
What was the
questions.
second one?
Enjoyed.
Okay.
And I would say it's not the things that you pick on that you're grateful for or that you've enjoyed. It's training your mind to go through that process and think that in your mindset, you've got these little radars that are looking out for things. By asking yourself those questions on a regular basis, it's almost like you're training your mindset, your perspective to be more attuned to those things.
Yeah, and it's a great way of learning about yourself as well.
Yeah, but there is a hard wiring part of us that fears failure. But again, choice, isn't it? You either play safe, and try and protect yourself from failures, or you kind of, as they say, fail fast, move forward and learn and keep going and growing. From the moment we're born, we've made mistakes. When we learn to walk, we fall. But until that critical mind kicks in, we just pick ourselves up and keep going. You don't see a baby still sat on the floor and then they get to 10 and they're still there because they fell over once. So we've got it in us. We were born with everything that we need. We've got all the confidence. We've got all the self-belief. It just gets knocked out of us. Life happens. But, we've still got it. We've just got to connect to it. We've just got to believe, and we've just got to keep moving forward and learn as we go and grow.
Well, I think it's a really, really good way to finish up, Christian. I really appreciate your time and sharing all this cool stuff. So if someone's wanted to, find out a bit more about what you do and how you do it, where can they find you, and how does it work, even with hypnotherapy? I mean,
probably the best place is my website, which is christianbaker.net. I'm on all the social channels. I share a weekly YouTube video, podcast episode to help people to look at the things we've talked about. So if anyone's interested in how they can, learn, grow, and develop their mindset, then feel free to pop along, check those things out. But there's various different things. I have some online courses for people. So there's a few different levels. There's the free resources. I have some online courses, and then I do work with a limited number of personal clients as well. So there's something for everyone. So go and have a look, and if I can be of any help or anyone's got any questions, then feel free to get in touch.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll put your website link in the show notes so people can find you, and then if they want to find out more, they can contact you. But
excellent.
Any last comments or anything else that you fancied sharing before we go?
No, I think it's just that reminder to people that it is possible. Believe in yourself more, take action, and you can achieve the life and the goals that you want. Just make it happen, and you can do it, but one step at a time. Don't get in your own way. Just take action and keep going.
Brilliant.